Okay, the Board of Governors meeting is now in session. I'm going to take the opportunity to make my remarks very quickly now. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for participating in our meetings, and for the many of you who came this morning early. It's very helpful to show your support. This morning, the governor's announcement was an important milestone for higher education and this board and our boards of trustees and universities. This announcement does have strong support from the leadership in the House and the Senate and from the business community. Our governor made it clear that a quality state university system is a key to a healthy and strong Florida, and he has made a commitment to us that he will vigorously pursue this agenda during the 2009 legislative session. I know this board is well aware of how difficult the coming months will be for our state and for our citizens as leadership contends with these enormous fiscal and financial problems. I am pleased that the governor recognizes the state university system can be a part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And our board will do what it can to support this initiative, and I know all of our universities will do the same. However, our work has just begun. We have so much to do to continue to develop the right type of programming and creative solutions to be able to allow our universities to maintain their current status, but even get better. And it's so important that we continue to strive for more quality and better stature. This is going to take all of us working together, and I hope that the work that I've been doing over the last 6 months with each of the universities has helped somewhat to bring us together as a cohesive group, and hope that we can continue to work that way. Some of the things that were said this morning reminded me of the comments that I've made at each of the universities as I've gone around the system. I thought, well, gee, I must be pretty boring, but it was kind of nice to hear other people saying the same things, and that was, among them were the flexibility necessary in the tuition policy, the ability for the universities to establish differential tuition for different programs within their own schools, to develop up to a cap the level of tuition. In some cases, the tuition may be lower than it is today, depending on the program, and in other programs it might be higher. And so we don't necessarily have a situation that we're used to seeing, and that is one tuition the same everywhere. And I think that's a good thing, because as was pointed out earlier today, we are 11 very different institutions, and this allows that to be recognized, and I really commend the approach. The other thing I heard today was the need for more creative fundraising, because as we've said so many times, there's only really 3 ways to get your money: general revenue, tuition, and private donations, and we need to work on all 3 of them. We've got one step towards the tuition piece. We've got to encourage our development officers to be more creative in the manner in which they fundraise, to be able to fund more student-related and faculty-related issues, because most restricted dollars, are usually for buildings or scholarships or things of that nature, and I think we need to be a little bit more focused on some of the other things that we need. We have an opportunity within this flexible system, as we set aside the dollars for the need-based financial aid, to develop programs that will focus not only on the lowest income students, but those students that fall between the cracks, that are in between, those people that are in the lower middle income. And I think that this program, it kind of calls out for us to be creative and to create those types of programs to be able to be sure that nobody's left behind, because there are a lot of programs at both the state, federal levels that are focused on the very lowest income. We need to do something for those just a little bit, in a little bit different situation. I also want to acknowledge that a lot of what's gone on, we thank the governor, the governor's staff, Dean Colson, all of the presidents, the boards of trustees, our board of governors, but a lot of work has been done by the Florida Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the Florida Council of 100. They have worked tirelessly along with all of us in trying to learn the system and to develop some ideas. I have gone to 4 of their roundtables, including one yesterday, and it's kind of interesting because in every one, depending upon the attendance, you have very different conversations. And at the end of the day, they will have had an opportunity to hear from almost, I'm sure, from every type of constituent. And they will be developing a report to discuss the future of higher education in a very comprehensive way for the 21st century. And I appreciate their work. We were going to hear more about that program today from Mark Wilson, the president and CEO of the Florida Chamber, but he was not able to stay for our meeting. He had to catch a flight. So we will do that again. Maybe just wait until they complete their work. So, but they have had a hand in some of our progress. But we have a lot more work to do. We want to make sure that of course, this bill gets passed this year, but to continue to lay the groundwork for the predictable funding levels that we need to have to allow us to plan going forward, which makes us have to look at the general revenue piece. And there are many ways to look at it, whether it's a financial, a numbers-driven formulaic approach, or as was mentioned yesterday, a contractual approach. A lot of ways to look at it, and I think that accountability associated with that type of funding is exactly what we need, but it's got to be longer term and more predictable. At our last meeting, Chancellor Rosenberg advised us that he was departing in mid-February, and a few weeks later, at the first meeting of the search committee, I was asked to make a recommendation at this meeting for what we will do in that interim. And of course, we have put out a press release, and I had been working with President John Delaney to assist the Board of Governors during that interim period between Chancellor Rosenberg's departure and the selection of a new chancellor, which is anticipated to be completed hopefully by July 1st of this year. So if you all approve, I would propose that John Delaney be President in Residence, and as an appropriate title, since he would continue in his capacity as the President of University of North Florida, and he will assist us on a part-time basis in moving forward with our initiatives and the development of our staff. I think John's well-positioned to assist us in this role, and particularly during the legislative session. He has assured me that he is not going to apply for the chancellor's position, and that was one of the criteria when I was asked to move forward with this. But he is very honored to be considered for this role, and I owe a deep thank you to the Board of Trustees at University of North Florida for being very supportive of this initiative. So I really, at this time, would like to have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? So many as favor the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Well, congratulations. Welcome. And I just, in closing, since September, at that time, I think I had visited 8 of our schools. I am now down to one remaining, University of West Florida, which is coming up in December. And I had very interesting meetings at, well, actually, I must have only had 7 at that time, because I've since been to FAMU, I have been to Florida Gulf Coast, and I have been to University of North Florida. All very different institutions, all having a personality of their own, and all very enthusiastic about what they do. And so I am, again, gratified for having had this opportunity. I've learned a great deal. I've found things that I can try to work on at each of the schools, and I've been trying to do that, some successfully, some marginally, and some still with a lot of hope. But I continue. Change continues, though, with our system, and we will soon be saying farewell to Mitch Medique, who has been the president of Florida International University since 1986, 22 years, and led that university through a most phenomenal period of growth, maturation, and change. He has an absolutely beautiful campus there. I was so impressed with it. So impressed with their law school that I had to call my own dean, who's sitting right back there from FSU, and tell him that his whole school could fit in their lobby. But it is a magnificent job. And so Mitch has announced to the members of his board of trustees this past Friday that he would step down when they found a successor, and I expect that he will be with us a while longer as the board proceeds through this. We will be sure that he gets the proper recognition. I am gratified, though, that as the board, their board is proceeding with its search process, that their chair did contact me to be sure that we had Board of Governors participation in that search, and asked particularly if I could recommend 2 people to sit on their presidential advisory committee, which is a state and community-based group of people who will be advising their search committee. And so John Dasberg and Carolyn Roberts will be doing that as part of this search. And I think those are the kinds of collaborative efforts we'd like to see going forward as we move along. I'm hopeful that we will no longer spend time debating governance issues. One of the things that I hope that this legislation does this year is to try to clarify those most important issues that seem to get in our way as we move forward. I think we've made a lot of strides, and I think that working together is a much better way of doing this. So I am very happy that progress is here and that we have a lot more opportunities. Our next meeting is going to be January 28th and 29th at Florida A&M in Tallahassee. And until then, I appreciate all of the work that you all do. And please, you know, anything that we can do, our staff or I or any member of the board, to help make your jobs easier, please give us a call. We're here to serve. And with that, I would like a motion for the approval of the minutes, please.
Second.
Any corrections, discussion, otherwise? Hearing none. Is there any objection? Motion. The minutes are approved. Chancellor, you have a brief report?
Madam Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. This morning, our Governor, Charlie Crist, spoke for me. There's no need today to report further.
Next item, we're not going to have item 4, so let's go to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have only one, approval of a board regulation dealing with auxiliary operations, which was noticed.
Second.
Any objection? Show it adopted. All right, we're going to call on the chairs. Governor Parker?
Yes, Madam Chair, we had an opportunity for the Facilities Committee to meet in the interim, and we have several items that we'd like to present to the full body to consider. I think in your board minutes, you actually had a copy of the minutes from our meeting, so if there are any questions regarding the actual items, you can look at them there. But there are three items we want to present for consideration, and let me get to the right page. Excuse me one second. The first item is, right here. It's to approve amended board permit bond regulation 14.0055 with certification and competitive selection, construction management services, and design build services. This is actually put up for comment. We did receive some comments. I do want to make one commendation to Governor Meyer for his recommendation that we have student involvement as a part of this regulation, and it has been included in there. So I'd like to submit this, and I think, Chris, I'm looking to you, this is now for final approval for this body at this point? Yes. Okay. So I'd like to submit that up for a motion for the body for approval.
Second.
Any objection? So adopted.
Right. The next item for action from the Facilities Committee meeting is to approve allocations of funds from the University Concurrency Trust Fund to update university campus master plans in accordance with Florida statutes. I think that you'll note in your packages that there were dollars that were allocated to each of the universities in order to complete these plans. One thing that you may note that was mentioned in our committee is that we are going to be looking to the universities to report back so we can at least have some more information about how the monies were used. And that was an additional item that was added at the request and direction of Governor Temple. So I also would submit this for the body for consideration.
Second.
So many in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
And the final item is the additional information regarding the SUS 0809 capital improvement fee project. I'm throwing off this one. I think these are our legislative issues. I think it'll make more sense if they're actually taken up by a legislative committee. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So those are the final action items I think will be taken up as a part of our committee for the full board consideration, Madam Chair.
Okay, so have you made a motion for the last?
So moved.
Oh, it's just, I'm sorry.
Right. I think it's basically taken up.
It's just information.
Yeah, they're legislative items that should be approved as a part of legislative.
That's correct. So we're moving, that's the end.
That is the
So
end.
we're going to move right into the legislative committee, and I'm the chair of that. So let me just ask Rick. Okay, Rick, you're going to give a brief overview of these items A through G.
Yes, ma'am. Let me state that between now and the time these bills go to the legislature, there could be minor tweaks. There could be minor tweaks in language as they go through the bill filing process, but no changes in substance. And Chris will talk about items A, B, C, D, and E, and Dr. Lamont will talk about item E, and I'll cover the last item. But we'll do a brief description and then answer any questions.
Before Chris begins, these are very minor, so we're going to speed through.
Thank you, yes, and these were all covered by the Facilities Committee and forwarded to the Legislative Committee, so they've been fully vetted. The first one is a change to the Challenge Grant Program. This would make it clear that any private sources of funds expended for the purpose of these facilities challenge grants would remain eligible for state matching funds without creating a financial obligation on the part of the state of Florida. That's item A. Any questions, or I can move to item B?
Go on to, are there questions? I think we should take them at the time he explains. Any questions? That's clear to everyone? Okay.
The next item is an increase in the minor projects threshold from $1 million to $2 million, and that was previously discussed at our September board meeting.
Okay. Any questions? All right, the capital improvement fee?
The capital improvement fee is a change. The capital improvement fee is for those CITF projects. An example of those is provided, as Chair Parker mentioned, for the Facilities Committee. Under item C is a list of the types of projects we're talking about. It's behind the Facilities Committee tab. That fee has been fixed since 1988. This would allow the trustees to establish a greater fee. Could be capped, it could increase no more than $2 per year. It would be capped at 10% of tuition.
Any questions? Okay, move on to the next.
The next one is related to, as we know, with the economic difficulties, there still continues to be a need for university construction. This would redirect the taxes and fees levied under this chapter, which relates to federal estate taxes, to Ancillary Facilities Construction Trust Fund, and would earmark a portion of that to be used for Concurrency Trust Fund, which currently has no revenue stream coming in.
Any questions on that one? All right, move on, Chris.
And finally, we do not yet have the language, but this goes back to the governor's initiative to accelerate university construction and all construction as an economic stimulus. And the intent here would be to provide some minor relief on release of those funds, 6 to 8 weeks, to further speed university construction of projects. So it's the intent just to allow us to work closely with the governor's office, with the legislature, see if there's any bureaucratic barriers that could be removed to allow quicker release of funding.
Any questions on that one? All right, hearing none. Rick, let's go on to F and G, please. Okay, here comes Ari for
Madam
F.
Chair, item F is to remove from statute, or to attempt to remove from statute, a defunct and inoperative board, which is the responsibility of the chancellor and for which he or she in the future have audit risk. The staff associated with this board is housed at Florida State University, which is also in agreement with the action before you.
But it would redirect their efforts, is that not correct?
It is true that the staff associated with this group has worked with us for years and is keenly interested in maintaining and even enhancing its relationship as it provides information, data, and internet capabilities to the Board of Governors and to the state.
And this just codifies the nature of the existing relationship and eliminates the old language that no longer has meaning. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any questions on that? All right, Rick, now talk about campus police jurisdiction.
Over the past year, our university police have had some cases dismissed because the judges ruled that they did not have authority to take action off of their property. This language would correct that by doing two things. One, it would extend the jurisdiction of university police to 1,000 feet off of university property so that adjacent roads would be under their jurisdiction. Also, it would recognize those mutual aid agreements that our university police have with other law enforcement agencies so that actions they take under those agreements are recognized and upheld in court.
Are there questions for Rick on that one? All right, these are the list of the substantive bills that we will be pursuing. Is there a motion or in a second that we adopt this as our part of our program this year? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Somebody in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
And Madam Chair, the last page of your red book is a list of priorities that you previously discussed.
I do want to just review those with you. After our last meeting at the University of South Florida in September, I had the opportunity, along with some Board of Governors staff, to meet with lobbyists from all of the institutions. And we had an opportunity to try to prioritize our issues that were non-substantive, that were more of a financial nature, as opposed to those that we just reviewed. And we discussed these yet again in our legislative committee. There was a telephonic meeting about 3 weeks ago. Let me review those. Our first item was to mitigate our budget, any budget cuts in our base funding. Second was tuition authority with flexibility, and I guess I'd like to substitute for that support of the governor's package that was outlined today. The third was coverage for utilities payment increases. The fourth was the medical education funding for our two existing mature medical schools, USF and University of Florida, and the two new schools, FIU and UCF, and the $1.8 million for new college that was due to them when they were broken off from the University of South Florida, just to allow them to become whole again. This was due to them, and they have not been able to get it in the last couple of years, so we put that priority on the same basis as we did with the medical schools. It's for their academic and administrative support infrastructure. And then the last item was pursuit of matching funds, both Cortellis and other matching funds, to be able to move forward our projects as quickly as possible. Is there anything, any comment or discussion on this list, or something, anybody think we ought to reorganize these things, or take something off, put something on? Is everyone comfortable with this? Would we like to move that this be our... All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? So many in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. That concludes my report. Governor Tripp,
Thank you.
Audit Committee.
The Audit Committee met by phone conference on November 5. Myself, Governor Temple, Governor Stavros, Governor Martin, Chancellor Rosenberg, and Inspector General Terry Harper participated. The agenda included consideration of the Audit and Compliance Committee work plan, and we considered that and approved it. We had a brief discussion and acceptance of the Inspector General annual report and the Board of Governors operational audit. We proposed the 209 Audit and Compliance Committee meeting schedule and accepted that. We did a review of the revised Audit and Compliance Committee proposed charter and that of the Inspector General charter. We received comments and short presentations with questions from the Chief Audit Executives from USF, Debbie Gula, and UF, Urenic. Probably not pronouncing that right. We received very good feedback on two areas. The BOG charter should be a collaborative process that includes obtaining feedback from the University Board of Trustees audit chairs, in addition to critical comments from chief audit executives. I had drafts sent to the University Board of Trustees audit committee chairs with my personal phone calls following up to each of them. I've had the opportunity to be in contact with each of the chairs of the University Boards of Trustees and asked for their feedback. There has been contact on the staff level by Jerry with each of the Auditor Generals or Inspector Generals of the universities. And the comments are being incorporated. I've asked Mr. Harper to engage in further discussions with the chief audit executives, with their general counsels, and either the presidents or their designees. My timetable is that we will finally have an Audit and Compliance Committee charter to be reviewed and approved at our committee meeting on the 29th, and the final draft for the full presentation to the board in March of 2009. I appreciate your comments that we would like to get this governance issue behind us. This may be one of those that will finally, eventually get behind us. Just a couple of comments. It's very, very difficult for us to come to a final conclusion on the various responsibilities that we have. We have by Constitution and by statute an obligation for the Board of Governors to have an audit function. I've asked our General Counsel to give me a letter that states basically, in her opinion, what that function is. We also have an audit function that is directly the responsibility of the trustees, and a compliance function. So what we're trying to do is put together something that allows what I believe would be the public and the legislature to be comfortable that we are all monitoring the actions of the university system, and that we have in place a good plan so that everybody can be comfortable that we're doing what we should do. Comment: we don't have the staff to try and to go inside and have what should I say, a working product inside of any kind of university audit. And so I'm saying this for everybody to hear. What I'm looking to try and do is figure out a way that we can respond to the Legislative Audit Committee when they say to this Board of Governors, do you know what's going on? Are you functioning? Are you protecting the money that we give you, that you pass through to the various universities? Are we working with all of the audit committees at the universities to make sure that we have the best plans and the best practices there? And I think if we can come up with something that we can all agree upon, then we can put this to rest. And so I'm going to continue to work with this, make the phone calls back again to the chairs of the audit committees, and hopefully within the next 30 or 40 days we'll come to agreement.
Thank you, Governor Tripp. Any questions? Is that all from your committee?
That's it. That's a lot.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. The next committee is the Trustee Nomination Board Procedures Committee, and I think almost everybody, if not everyone, sat through that committee this morning. We have one action item for the board, and that is the request from the University of West Florida that their chair and vice chair be authorized to extend their terms up to 2 years relative to their search process if they are elected in those positions in December. Is there a motion?
Move it.
And a second. A motion and a second. As so many favor the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, show that adopted. Governor Pappas? Or is it going, or Governor Martin, who's going to?
Yeah, I'll handle A and C, and Governor Pappas will handle item B.
Okay.
The three items for approval for the full board. First item is item A, the approval to revise areas of programmatic strategic interest as identified in the 2005-2013 State University System for strategic plan. Move approval.
Oh, it's been moved and seconded. So many in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So adopted.
Okay, I'll ask Governor Pappas to handle the enrollment planning.
We addressed and recommended a motion for the full board that would allow for exceptions to the existing enrollment cap, which would allow the chancellor to consider and approve cases where there's capacity in the institution, the ability to fund growth with marginal tuition dollars alone, and with the understanding that no request would be made to fund the over-enrollment of those specific exceptions. And it was approved by the committee.
Is there a motion to adopt it by the full board? So moved. Second?
Okay.
Is there, so many in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, moving right along.
Item C, the last item, there were three BOG regulations that we were approving for the notice of intent to amend BOG resolutions.
Is there a motion? Any objection? Hearing none, so adopted.
Just as a final comment, there were 2 additional items that we discussed on the agenda, and they will be on the agenda for the January meeting. Those were the degree programs, the approval, and the termination. So those will be on the January agenda for approval.
Okay, and thank you very much. Is that it from your all's committee? Okay, Governor Marshall, Student Affairs? I think you had just one item to...
Yes,
to notice, a notice of intent for a board regulation,
that's
series
right.
of board regulations.
And I don't think there's anything else to discuss about that. It would have been presented by the chair if she were here. And let me ask again, John Rogers, do you have anything to...
Is there anyone here who did not hear the earlier explanation? All right, is there a motion then to adopt the noticing of all the regulations in item A? And a second? Second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, show it adopted. Item B appears to be a repeal. A notice of intent to repeal a regulation dealing with veteran benefits because it was included in another one of those regulations.
Yes, it was.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any objection? Hearing none, show adopted. Okay, I'd like to call on Governor Roberts to give us an update on the Chancellor Search Committee.
Yes, we've had one meeting on telephone, and we agreed in that meeting to notify 3 firms who deal in that area with search on that level, and we are now in the process of sending them a letter, and we will do that in the next week with a synopsis of our system so they can understand what the candidate would be stepping into, but what a great position it is. And we will interview firms in January and then move quickly into the next phase of interviewing all the candidates who will apply.
Are there any questions for Governor Roberts? Okay, well, thank you very much. I just want to thank everyone again for their participation and continued support. And we're getting ready to go into the holiday season, so I wish everyone happy holidays. And I think we won't meet again until January. Governor
Government Devitt, Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a quick comment.
Sure.
I apologize for leaving a committee meeting this morning. I asked for about a 20-minute meeting with Governor Christ to apologize that I missed the morning comments. Governor Temple gave me a list of what's happened, and I thanked him for what he did and how important it was that he would come forward and talk as he did. It gave me an opportunity also to thank him for putting me on this Board of Governors, and I told him how impressed I've been with the dedication of the entire Board of Governors, Chancellor and the staff, how impressed I am with the presidents of the universities who are dedicated to their universities, and I always take an opportunity to do one of the things that you mentioned for fundraising, which is matching funds. I impressed upon him how important it was that we continue to have matching funds for our universities. Having chaired 2 foundations for 2 universities in the state, I told him how important it was to go to private people and say, you give us $1 million or you give us $700,000, there'll be a match of another $300,000-400,000 or whatever it is. Now I know it's changed. So I did tell him to please continue keeping in this budget the matching funds for the universities. So I just wanted to mention that to you, that I feel strongly for the last 2.5 years that I've been on this board. I'm impressed with all the governors and with what's happening, and I thank you for your dedication to the university system of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Stavros. And
Madam Chair,
yes, Governor Marshall.
briefly, a small point of recollection. I had occasion to talk with Luis Cortellis on the telephone a few days ago. We had a long and very pleasant conversation, and you'll be interested, many of you know the Cortellis family. that she has moved her whole horse operation to Lexington, Kentucky. She lives there and is enthusiastic about what she's doing. She maintains an office in Miami for her interests there. We talked, of course, about her husband, Alec, who established the Cortellus Fund and served on the Board of Regents, and I told her I would mention this to some of you, and here's a chance to all of you. She maintains a strong interest in education in Florida, including especially the vet school at the University of Florida, and she clearly will remain a friend of education in Florida.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. Any more comments from anyone for the good of the order?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to take a minute and thank you for letting us meet by telephone last month on our committee meetings. I think that was very helpful, but it also created an extra burden for the staff, and I want to thank the staff for stepping up and making those meetings happen. We've had a lot of great staff work in the last 2 months, particularly our Auditor General, Vicki Shirley, with the powers and duties component. I know that's been a huge burden for her. Mikey for trying to get a hold of everyone, and you know, and I've had the opportunity to work with Tim Jones and Nate and others, and the staff response has been extraordinary in the last couple of months, and I'd be remiss if we didn't recognize that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I agree. I concur that they're doing a great job with very little depth here. We're thin. So, anything else? Okay, well, again, thank you very much, but you need to hang around for a minute because we've got the annual meeting of the foundation, but it won't take but a second. So, the Board of Governors is adjourned.